We're on the top of DAF Yud Zayin today, and we were addressing an apparent contradiction between a Mishnah in Maseches Tamid and a Mishnah in Maseches Midos. The Mishnah in Maseches Tamid indicates that the Beis HaTloim, a certain chamber that is located off of an atrium called the Beis HaMokad. The Beis HaMokad was an atrium that was protruding into and out of the temple. It was off of one of the walls. It was constructed in one of the walls of the temple on the north side of the temple, and half of it was therefore technically inside the temple, half of it was outside the temple. This Beis HaMokad had in its corners 4 separate chambers that opened up into this atrium, and the Mishnah in Maseches Tamid identifies the chamber in the northwest corner as being the Beis HaTloim, as the sheep chamber, the chamber where they kept sheep for karbanos. The Gemara had presented us with a contradiction, because in the Mishnah in Maseches Midos, it tells us that this Beis HaTloim is in the southwest corner, not in the northwest corner. The Gemara had answered this contradiction by saying that there are 2 separate authors, therefore 2 different opinions. The author of Maseches Tamid is the Chachamim, is the anonymous author, the standard author of the Mishnayos. And the author of Maseches Midos is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who has a different opinion. That's where we left off yesterday. Comes along another answer that's going to be offered in the Gemara, and that's of Rav Ada Bereder of Yitzchak, and he's going to suggest that there really is no contradiction, but it's all a matter of perspective. He says, Amar Hai Lishka Aktsuye Mekatsya Udaasi Mitzafa Mischaziele Bedarom Udaasi Midarom Mischaziele Betzafa. He explains that really this chamber is not, there's no dispute as to where it was positioned. Everyone agrees that it was along the western wall, and it was elongated along the western wall. And that, if you were coming in from the south, it would appear as if it were more positioned in the north. And if you were coming from the north, it would appear that it was more positioned in the south. It was a question of optics, and the way that it appeared, depending upon the direction that you were going in coming into this large atrium, you would have a different appearance depending upon where your position was in relation to this chamber. However, that's only part of the answer, because the Gemara here is not suggesting that the sheep chamber was exactly centered. We know that it couldn't have been exactly centered because that there are a total of 4 chambers, and each chamber is in a corner. So you have to conclude that the sheep chamber is positioned as a long chamber. It's larger, its length along the western wall of this atrium is longer than the other chambers, and yet it is still closer to either the south side or the north side, and because you have to save room for the other chamber that's in a western corner. So either this is in the south, towards the southwestern corner, or it's towards the northwestern corner. The question is, which one is it really? Now that we've explained that there's no contradiction, it's a question of optics and perspective. In reality, where is this chamber more positioned? More towards the north or more towards the south? Answers the Gemara, Umistavra de b'ma'aravis deromis havoi. It's more logical to conclude that it was in reality closer to the southwest corner instead of the northwest corner. And now we're going to prove that. Mimai, midraminan lechem haponim alechem haponim, umishaninan amar Rav Huna bereiter Rav Yoshua, marka chashiv derech yamin, or marka chashiv derech simol. Now, I'm going to simplify this as much as I can, even though Rashi, I think, is a little bit more complicated than what I'm going to be presenting. The simplest way to understand it is that if we go back to the way that the Mishnayos are cited on DAF Tesvav Amid Beis and Tezayin Amid Aleph, we note that in Maseches Tamid, it starts off just by telling us that the position of the Lishkas Tloim, of the sheep chamber, is in the northwest corner. And then it lists all 4 chambers that were off of the Beis HaMokad. And in this list, it says that the 4 lishkos are echas lishkos hatloim, be'echas lishkas hachosmos, the seal chamber, be'echas lishkas beis hamokad, a chamber called the off of the beis hamokad chamber, be'echas lishka sha'osin ba lechem haponim. And the fourth chamber is the bread chamber, the chamber where they would prepare the bread. Now, if you understand that when you're listing off the lishkos, there's got to be an order, as presumably the order is based upon how you would encounter these chambers as you're taking a tour around this atrium. First you get to this chamber, then to that chamber, then to this chamber, and at the end, the very last chamber that you would encounter after you started in the Lishkas Hatzloim is the bread chamber. Okay? Now, this is a contradiction also to the Mishnah Maseches Midos. Even if we are able to resolve the position of the Lishkas Hatzloim, even though the Mishnayos seem to say it's in two different positions, we answer this as a question of perspective, we have another problem. Why is it that the bread chamber is listed as the last of the four in Maseches Tamid, where in Maseches Midos it's listed as the second of the four? In the Mishnah in Maseches Midos, if you go back to the bottom of DAF Tesvav Amid Beis and the top of Yud Tezayin Amid Aleph, we started once again with the Lishkas Hatzloim, but instead of going in the order that the Mishnah Maseches Tamid lists, it says right after the Lishkas Hatzloim, which is in the southwest corner, then you get to the Lishka of the Lechem Hapanim, the bread chamber, which is in the northeast corner. Now, how do you work that out that the ordering is different? So the answer that was provided by Rav Huna Berei de Rav Yoshua is that it's a question of which direction you're going off of the Beis Hatloim. If you're going clockwise or you're going counterclockwise. The Mishnah in Maseches Midos is going counterclockwise. Derech Yamin is what we say. Derech Yamin means you start with your right. Anytime, if you just imagine my walking around this room, if I lead with my right, what direction am I going to go? Go this way, exit stage right. So, and then I'm going to go around the room, and I'll come back this way. So how have I gone? I've gone counterclockwise, right? So derech yamin means counterclockwise. If, however, I lead with my small, I lead with my left, then I'm going clockwise. Okay? So now we understand the principle. And the way to reconcile it is that when you're leading with your right, so you start at the Lishkas Tloim, and the very first chamber you hit when you're leading with your right is the Lechem Hapanim chamber, is the bread chamber. Now, if that's, and that's why it's listed right first after the Lishkas Tloim. But if you're leading with your left, meaning that you're going clockwise, so then it'll be the last chamber you hit when you start from the Lishkas Tloim. Now, think about this for a second. So the Gemara now says, if that's the way that we reconcile this contradiction, why it's listed as first after the Lishkas Tloim in one Mishnah and last after the Mishkas Tloim in another Mishnah, let's think about this for a second. Where is the Lishkas Lechem Haponim identified as? It's in the northeast corner. Northeast corner. And we said that it's the first Lishka that you hit after leading off, going counterclockwise from the Lishkas Hatloim. The only way that it can be the first place that you hit, if you're going counterclockwise from the Lishkas Hatloim, is if the Lishkas Hatloim is in the southwest corner. It's got to be in the southwest corner.
They're opposite.
Excuse me. It's got to be in the.
You came in from the wrong side.
I'm sorry. The right. Dromis Mizrachisi Lishka Shayu Osin Balechem Hapanim Mizrachis Sephonis. Let me just think this through for a second. So the Gemara explains as follows. I amart bishlama maravis deromis havai. If you say that it was the southwest corner, so hainu dimitaretz lechem haponim alechem haponim. That's how you can resolve how the lechem haponim chamber is the first chamber that you hit when you're going which way? When you're going counterclockwise. So let me just review this. My Rav is Dramas Yihaisalish to carbon. Dramas Mizrachis. I'm sorry. Yeah, Dromis Mizrachis. I made a mistake. It's not, the bread chamber is not in the northeast corner, it's in the southeast corner. Right. I apologize. My mistake. That was my mistake. It's in the southeast corner. So in the only way that it can be the first chamber you hit, if you're going counterclockwise, if it's going to be in the southeast corner, as the Mishnah Maseches Midos says, so the only way that it can be the first chamber you hit is if you're in the southwest corner. So remember, you're in the southwest corner, you're going counterclockwise, so therefore it's going to be in the northwest, in the southeast corner. Right. Sorry. It's going to be in the southeast corner. It's going to be in the southeast corner because it's the first chamber you hit as you're going counterclockwise. Okay? So, Iyamart Bishlam Vimarobis Deromis Havoi, Hainu Dimitarts Lechem Aponim Alechem Aponim. Then it makes sense. Ela Iyamart Tzonis Marobis Havoi. But if you're going to tell me that the Lishkas Hatzloim is in the northwest corner, so then Sof, Mighty Roots of the Lechem Haponim. Then how can you possibly hit the bread chamber first, even if you're leading off with your right, going in a counterclockwise direction? That's not going to be the first chamber you hit. Because if you're in the northwest corner, the first chamber you hit will be in the southwest corner. And the Lechem Haponim chamber is in the southeast corner. So therefore, the only way that this will work is if you say that the Lechem is that the Lishkas Hatzloim is in the southwest corner. Therefore, when you lead off with your right, going counterclockwise, the first chamber you'll hit will be the bread chamber. And it'll be the last chamber you hit if you lead off with your left, going in a clockwise direction. So Elalav Shma Mina b'Marobis Deromis Havoi Shma Mina. So that's conclusive evidence, says the Gemara, that in reality, regardless of perspective, the position of the Lishkas Hatzloim was in the southwest corner of the Beis Hamoka. Good. Okay. So now the Gemara says, the Ha'amar Mar Kol Pinio Shatapona Lo Yihiyu Ela Derech Yamin LeMizrach. So the Gemara says, but I don't understand. How can you tell me that one Mishnah, the Mishnah Maseches Tamid, lists the chambers that you're going to encounter when you're going in a clockwise direction, leading off with your left? Don't we always learn that you should always lead off with your right to go in a counterclockwise direction, so that you start in the east first when you go around the Mizbeach? Isn't that the general principle, that when you're facing the Mizbeach from the ramp, and you need to revolve around the Mizbeach, you start going eastward so that you can always lead off with your right? So then how can the author of Maseches Tamid start doing a tour of the Beis Hamokad, listing the chambers going in a clockwise, leading off with your left? That's the question.
Isn't right clockwise and left counterclockwise? No,
right is counterclockwise. You lead off with your right. Think about it for a second. When you lead off with your right, you're going counterclockwise. You lead off. Exit stage right. Exit stage right.
That's counterclockwise.
That's counterclockwise.
Look at the clock.
Swing around. Because you sing where you're facing.
Think about it. When you think about it, you'll get it. So the Gemara now says, Hani mili ba'avoda. Aval hacha chushvana bi'almahu. So the Gemara answers, you're right when it comes to doing the avoda. You always have to lead off with your right hand, with your right side. But if you're listing what is contained within the Beis HaMikdash, you're just giving the floor plans. There's nothing wrong with going in a clockwise direction if conceptually that's easier for you. For whatever reason you might have some other criterion other than leading off with your right, to list the ones on the left first. When it comes to doing the avodah, you always start with your right. As you can see, you have to sort of create a map in your head, or have a very carefully graphed out map in front of you when you go through this sugya. But the bottom line is that the Lishkas Hatzloim is in the southwest corner, and the Lishka B'Lechem Haponim is in the southeast corner. There you go. Okay. Shekohen Gadol Makriv Chelik Barosh V'Notel Chelik Barosh. And then we go back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that the Kohen Gadol has the prerogative on any given day to insert himself into the avoda and say, hey guys, I'm going to take over now, I'm going to do the avoda. And he also has the right to take whatever portion he wants from the sacrificial meats. Tonu Rabbanon, Ketzad Makriv Chelik Barosh. So the Brisa just clarifies this. What does it mean? He gets to always lead off first and do whatever he wants as far as the avoda. Omer Ola Zu Ani Makriv Mincha Zu Ani Makriv. He can say, excuse me, Rabbi, say I'm cutting in the line. I'm going to bring this Ola, or I'm going to bring this Mincha. Ketzad Notel Chelik Barosh. What does it mean? He gets to take the first, or he can stand in front of the line to take the portion. Omer Chata Zu Ani Oichel Asham Zu Azeh Ani Oichel. He can say, excuse me, Rabbi, say I'm going to eat the meat from this carbon chatas, or I'm going to eat the meat from this carbon asham. And then the Brisa continues and it says, V'no tel chalo mishtei chalos, that the Kohen Gadol, when it comes on Shavuos, we know that there are 2 loaves of bread called the shtei halechem that are waved over the Mizbeach. We are told that the Kohanim are supposed to eat that bread. However, the Kohen Gadol gets 1 full loaf, and all of the other Kohanim get the other full loaf. It's a pretty good gig to be the Kohen Gadol. You get actually a whole loaf where all the other Kohanim, the thousands of other Kohanim, have to split up that one loaf among themselves. But then it also says, Arba o chamesh mimase lechem haponim. And then the Kohen Gadol, on a weekly basis, we know that there are 12 loaves. The Kohen Gadol gets to take 4 or 5. Why 4 or 5? Why not tell us which one it is? We'll see in just a minute. And Rebbe Omer la'olam chamesh. And Rabbi says the Kohen Gadol always gets 5 out of the 12. Shenamar v'haisa li'aharonu levanav, mechza li'aharonu mechza lebanav. As the Torah says, that it shall be, the bread shall be for Aaron and his sons. But when it says Aaron and his sons, it sounds like 50-50. 50% for Aaron, and 50% for his sons. And as we know, 50% of 12 is 5. So therefore, Aaron gets 5. Well, it's almost 50%. But that's what Rebbe seems to be saying. That's in itself problematic, but we'll explain that in just a minute, okay? So the Gemara says, Hagufa Kasha. That in itself is problematic. Before we go to the issue of 50%, let's talk about the ordering of the Mishnah. Amart notel chala echas mishtei chalos mani Rebbe hidamar palga shakil. So first we let off with the halacha of Shavuos, which says that he gets 1 out of the 2 chalas, which sounds like it's going like Rebbe, who says that the Kohen Gadol gets half. He gets 50-50. But ema mitziyasa o arba o chamesh mimasa lechem hapanim asan l'rabbanan darmi lo shakil palga. The next statement of that Mishnah is that the Kohen Gadol gets either 4 or 5 loaves, which sounds like we're dafka want to give him less than half. So that goes according to the Chachamim who argue with Rebbe and says the Kohen Gadol does not get half; he gets less than half. But then Ema Seifa Rebbe Omer Lo Olam Chamesh. Then Rebbe says no, he's always entitled to 5 because that's half of 12. So it sounds like Reisha the Seifa Rebbe Umitziyasa Rabbanan question mark. So it seems like the first statement and the last statement are stating that he gets half like Rebbe, and the middle statement seems to be stating that he gets less than half. So it seems like it's totally out of order, this whole brisa. So the Gemara explains Amar Abaya Reisha Umitziyasa Rabbanan, that no, the first and second case, the case of Shavuos and the case of the showbread, are both going according to the Chachamim who say that the Kohen Gadol is really only entitled to less than half. Umodu Rabbanan Prusa the Lav Orach Ara Lamisva Kohen Gadol. The only thing is that on Shavuos, the reason why you give the Kohen Gadol a full half of the shtei halechem is because there's no other option. What are you going to do? You're going to give him a portion of a loaf? That's not derech eretz. It's not derech eretz to give the Kohen Gadol a portion of a loaf. Really, by rights, he should be entitled to less than 50% of the shtei halechem. But you can't cut into a loaf and give him like 3/4 of a loaf. That's not proper. So therefore, give him the whole loaf. Okay? But in reality, according to the Chachamim, the Kohen Gadol should only get less than half. So let's talk about the 4 or 5. So my arba o chamesh l'rabbanan, that goes according to the Chachamim. Da amri nichnas no tel sheish v'yotze no tel sheish. That you know that there's 12 loaves. So what's the law of the 12 loaves? The 12 loaves is that 6 are the property of the Kohanim who are leaving the shift on Shabbos, and the other 6 are the property of the Kohanim who are coming to take over, because there's a changing of the guard on Shabbos. The new shift comes in at the end of Shabbos, and the old shift leaves towards the end of Shabbos. So uschar hagofas telasos lo shakli mishtei misrei. So therefore boy miflag. So there's no compensation to the Kohanim who are nichnasim, because normally the Kohanim who are nichnasim that are doing the new job are in charge of keeping the doors, or it's taking care of keeping shop. The Kohanim who are leaving don't have to take care of the doors of the Heichal. Only the Kohanim who are taking over. So the Chachamim don't hold that they're entitled to any additional compensation for being the doorkeepers, and as a result, they get to split equally 6 and 6. So there's a total of 12 loaves, okay, that are divvied up. So therefore, because there's a total of 12 loaves that are divvied up, Batzer Chada Mipalga Chamei Shakel. So therefore, the Kohen Gadol is entitled to less than half of those 12 loaves, and therefore he's going to take 5. And then I guess among those 2 shifts, they'll divide the remaining 7 loaves among themselves. Now, L'Rebbe Yehud, so that's why it would be 5. Now, why would you say 4? So the Gemara answers because there's a separate machlokas between the Chachamim and Rebbe Yehuda regarding how you divide up the lechem haponim. It's a totally different machlokas. The Rebbe Yehuda the Amar nichnas notel sheva shtayim bischar hagafas delasos v'yotze notel chamesh. So the answer is like this: Rebbe Yehuda in another Mishnah states that really when you have the 12 loaves, you're only dividing up 10 out of the 12 among the 2 shifts, because 2 out of those 12s are set aside as compensation for the new shift of the kahuna, who are the doorkeepers for that day. And because you're compensating them for their work, which the other shift is not doing, so therefore it turns out that you only divide up equally 10 out of the 12 loaves. 2 of them are being used as compensation. So therefore, the shift that's coming in is entitled to a total of 7 loaves, 2 plus 5, and the leaving shift is entitled to 5 loaves. So now that we're only talking about 10 loaves as are the divi of the 2 shifts, the Kohen Gadol gets less than half of the divi of 10, which is 1 less than 5. So therefore he gets 4. So therefore boi miflag, so chamesh boi miflag, batzer chada mifalga v'shakel arba. So therefore, when the middle statement of our Bryce is said that the Kohen Gadol gets 4 or 5, what the author of the Bryce was really saying is, I'm not going to paskin who's right in the machlokas between the Chachamim and Rebbe Yehuda, as far as whether the leaving shift gets 7 and the new shift leaving shift gets 5 and the new shift gets 7, or whether both shifts get 6. But if you hold that both shifts get 6, then the Kohen Gadol gets 5. And if you hold that no, you're only divvying up 10 loaves and not 12 loaves, then the Kohen Gadol gets 4. So that's why he said 4 or 5. So Rava says, I disagree. He says, Kula Rebbe He. Really, the entire Brisa goes according to Rebbe. And because Rebbe holds that the Kohen Gadol always gets exactly half. So he gets half of the Shtei HaLechem, he gets half of the Lechem HaPanim. Then why does it 4 or 5 if he gets exactly half? B'savrla ka Rebbe Yehuda, because Rebbe holds like Rebbe Yehuda, that out of the 12 loaves, 2 are used for compensation, and they're only divvying up 10 loaves. And so therefore there's 5 loaves that should go to the Kohen Gadol. What about the 4 or 5? Why say 4 or 5? It should just be 5. So ve'elamai arba hachamesh boy lamishkal. So the Gemara answers lo kasha. Ha diika mishmar hamis akev. Ha deleka mishmar hamis akev. So the Gemara explains it like this: Iika mishmar hamis akev mishmona boy lamiflag v'shakil arba. Ileka mishmar hamis akev me'eser boy lamiflag v'shakil chamesh. So let me just explain what's going on over here. A mishmar hamis akev is a mishmar that's hanging around. Now, a mishmar means that's hanging around. We mean as follows. Normally, every week there's a different shift of Kohanim, except when there's Yantif involved. On Yantif, Kohanim from all over the world, from all over Eretz Yisrael come, and everyone works equally. There's no such thing as a mishmar. And therefore, when, let's say, Yantif coincides with Shabbos, or Yantif is on a Friday, or Yantif is on a Sunday, so when Yantif is on a Friday or a Sunday, really, it's not Yantif today, Shabbos. So really, we don't want to take away everything from the Mishmar whose day is today, and sort of give everything away and share it with all the other Kohanim. But we make a compromise, and we say that half of the showbread will go to all of the Kohanim who were here for Yantif, because they can't leave anyway. Yantif was Friday, right? So they can't leave. So we got to give them something. So we'll give them half of the showbread, and half of the showbread will go to the 2 shifts of Kohanim whose day is today with the changing of the guard. But let's say Yontif is on a Thursday or Yontif is on a Monday. When Yontif is on a Thursday or a Monday, we really shouldn't be giving any bread to the Kohanim who are hanging around. What do you mean when I say the Kohanim are hanging around? If Yontif was on a Thursday, Yontif's over. Friday is the weekday. But there could be some Kohanim who say, look, I live all the way up in Sfas. I'm never going to make it home in time for Shabbos. I'll stick around and, I'll stay in Yerushalayim, and I'm here, ich bin da, I'm ready to do the avoda, let me do something. So we say to a Kohen like that, look, really, we shouldn't give you anything, but we'll be nice to you. We'll take 2 loaves and we'll award it to the Kohanim who are sticking around. And it's the same thing, that if Yontif is on a Monday, so really, you shouldn't be here on Shabbos before. You got plenty. You have time to come on Sunday to make it in time for the Monday Yontif. But there's a guy who might say, "Listen, I have to be in the Beis Hamikdash on Monday. I might as well spend Shabbos in Yerushalayim." So we'll be nice to the guy and we'll say, "Well, for all the Kohanim who come a little bit early, we'll give 2 out of the loaves, out of the remaining 10 loaves, and we'll give it to the Kohanim who are from out of town, and it's not their mishmar." So in those situations, when you have a mishmar hamisakev, a group of Kohanim who are hanging around, that's really what it means, and they don't really belong here, we give them 2 loaves, and then it turns out, so 2 loaves go to the compensation of the doorkeepers. 2 loaves go to all of the other Kohanim whose mishmar is not today. Then it turns out that we have 8 loaves left. Half go to the leaving shift, and half go to the incoming shift. To the outgoing shift, half go to the incoming shift. So if the Kohen is going to take half, so in that situation he take 4, because there's only 8 loaves left. So therefore, when the Brisa says the Kohen Gadol takes 4 or 5, in a regular situation he take half of 10, which is 5. In a situation where there's a Mishmar HaMis'akev, when Yontif falls out on a Thursday or a Monday, then the Kohen Gadol will take 4, which is half of 8. Okay, so the Gemara now says, okay, that works out very nicely, but what about the last line of the Brisa? I hachi, if that's the case, my Rebbe Omer La'olam Chamesh, then why did the Brisa at the very end say, but Rebbe says, no, he only always takes 5. According to you, up until now, this was going to Rebbe, according to Rebbe also. So the last line of the Brisa makes no sense. But Rebbe says he only gets 5. He always gets 5. Then what about the previous statement you said was also Rebbe? The Rebbe says he gets 4 or 5. The Gemara says kasha. I don't have an answer to that question. It's taka a good kasha. So we're going to have to leave a kasha on Rava, and it makes more sense, therefore, to suggest that the Mishnah goes according, the Brisa goes according to the Chachamim, not according to Rebbe. And with this, we'll hold it. Have a wonderful day.